It's the 100th episode of Breakup Gaming Society. As part of the celebration, I'm going to give away what I'm pretty sure is the single most valuable title in my big box of comic books from the 1980s. Listen to the intro and outro for how that works.
Doing from exponential potential to not being able to pay for the rental or even a bill from the dental. The house, that for your mental. I've been through hard times too. The situation demand, I bring the hard rhymes through. That's why I'm raw times too.
It's the Colonel Hector Bravado in Starkville, Colorado, welcoming you to the 100th episode of Breakup Gaming Society, a podcast about board games, booze, and hip-hop, along with the compulsive digressions and storytelling you all repeatedly tolerate. I wanted this week to be big, so I rented one of those inflatable dancing things and put it outside my house, but that took all the marketing budget for the 100th episode push. Then it got attacked by dogs, and now it's just the bass fan unit aggressively blasting a single tatter of neon green vinyl straight up into the air. But I've got the unit for 3 more days, so fuck it, I'm going to leave it on. Drink of the week. I revisit West Bottom's Whiskey Company's Kansas City whiskey in a gentler, slightly more urbane format. Game of the week. You'll hear about Pyrotechnics, a prototype of a 2-player card game about fireworks that I got from the Seahorse and the Hummingbird. It's a tight little card game with simple rules, fast play, and an even faster squeeze on your decision-making ability. Then Walt, who has become Breakup Gaming Society's resident indie tabletop role-playing game curation hound, will reappear to show us 2 creations from designer Alessandro A.D. that were too wild to survive on itch.io. Brace yourself for the grim economics and commercialized sexuality of Burnout Reaper and Digital Angel. Track of the week. A spiritual reflection across the Atlantic of the U.S.'s early 2000s true school, 3 Feet Deep by DJ Format and Abdominal. This surfaced on the playlist, and I knew this was the end of summer song for the summer you deserved, but maybe didn't get. So now that we're on episode 100, please join me in my drive for 101. $101. That's my new donation goal to hit before the end of the year. So far this year, I've received $30 in donations. As usual, a $10 donation gets you the booklet and the frog sticker, always, no matter what. But we're going to give it a bit of a twist this time. If we cross $101, I am going to take the names of everybody who kicked in, pull one at random. One of you is going to get what I believe to be the single most valuable comics in my vintage 80s comics box. I've decided I don't really want old comics as much as I want new friends and listeners. So head over to the donate page, be one of those. Next stop, Kansas City. Again, it's Drink of the Week.
I kicked it, yup, I kicked it. Come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
Last episode, I marveled at the raw and uncompromising nature of West Bottom's Whiskey Company's Kansas City whiskey. This time, because I saved some of the bottle, I wanted to see what it would do with some very minor civilizing touches that I could execute without shit getting too complicated. So I blessed myself with a nice big pour over a big-ass square ice cube and garnished it with a twist of orange. Made sure to get the oil from that fruit all around the rim and tucked in, noting all its changing gradients and new faces from a still strong but colder first sip all the way to the oaky and buttery hints it showed as it relaxed in the water. What follows is the world's shortest 100th episode party, where I chat with the drink and speculate about PBR with Walt down in Florida. This is the 100th ever Drink of the Week, and we're doing another remote one with our resident TTRPG field maven, Walt of the Bog Folk and Liber Ladorum. What's up, my man?
Yo, it's me, Walt, the maven. How you doing today?
Pretty good now. So last week, Walt, just to cue you in, I had my first sit with West Bottom Whiskey Company's Kansas City whiskey, which is a bourbon and rye blend out of Kansas City, as one could infer from the title. I got to tell you, I had it neat. I liked it, but I have to tell you, my man, this is a boisterous drink. It's rowdy. At first, I was a dick because I was lazy and buzzed, and I was just making fun of the label, But this actually feels like a big, hale Midwestern friend, and overalls just walked into the living room to tip one with you. I'm not kidding. It's good.
Sounds good. Sounds refreshing, but not in the cool and relaxing way. In the interesting experience way. Not your typical whiskey.
Not out of the ones I've had in the last year. No, it has a lot of character. Like I said back in episode 99, when you taste this, it feels like real decisions were made. They're like, we're not going for something smooth, mid-market, and forgettable anyway. So here in Colorado, I now hold a rocks glass with one giant ice cube in it and West Bottom's whiskey, and I just prepared an orange twist and ran it all around the rim because I just wanted to see if we could sort of put a bow tie or a nice hat on my bumptious friend.
And how's that fit him?
Put the second splash on the ice, and I don't know that he's necessarily comfortable in it, but he's leaving fewer grease spots on my couch. if we're gonna run with that analogy. So just to let you know, Walt, it's 94 proof, and it has a strong rye punch. It really just puts you right on the floorboards. It walks right in and just gives you one of those, how the hell you doing, crush your handshake kind of grips. And none of that is a criticism. I actually like it. I've been on record as saying as much. What I wanted to see what would happen if we just kept that rowdy nature, but gave it a few civilizing brushstrokes. And I have to tell you, the ice melt, and this is one thing where I was careful. I filled the ice mold full of water from my Life Straw pitcher, which has a brand new filter. It makes pretty clean, sweet water. It tastes a lot like last time, but now I'm getting it with a bit of water cut, and I don't know why, but there's something now on the back end which sort of fades like a oaky peaty scotch. But then again, I haven't trusted my senses since the 8th COVID bout. So there you go. Just wanted to say hello to my friends in Kansas City who shot me the nice note when I sent them my very self-indulgent review. And yes, I would recommend anybody put a large ice cube in a glass, generous douse of West Bottom's Whiskey Company's Kansas City whiskey, and just a little orange peel. Tell us about PBR.
Well, it's probably more watery than what you're drinking. Doesn't really have that same character by any means. This is more of like, I don't know, that old guy in his overalls and no shirt sitting on the front porch of a house that's half collapsed down here in Florida, probably out on the swamp, probably in 90-degree heat. He's sweating, can sweating.
Wait a minute. Are you looking at satellite images of me on my property when you're talking about this?
No, but there is a mirror right in front of me.
Fair enough. So PBR, I was still of barely can pull it off bar going age when I noticed it was about 2007. And PBR starts showing up in all my favorite hipster dives. All of a sudden it's back on the shelf. And the first thing I think is, wait, you can drink that? And then everywhere. And not only that, I don't know about how it came into your life, and I'll clear the boards for you to tell your PBR adoption story, because it seems to be the one that's in your fridge more often than not. But yeah, you just kept seeing it in bars. But not only that, they'd do stuff where they'd run it for like $1 a can on a Tuesday night and shit, or pair it with some kind of well whiskey shot for $5 or something. And I was like, okay, but then I was like, I guess it's cool again. But after 5-6 years of putting it back on the menu, I eventually reverted to Coors Banquet beer as my general go-to mass market American beer. But you stuck with it. What's your PBR love story?
I didn't really stick with it so much as I came back to it. I do remember around that time, that's when I was in grad school, and it got super popular at the hipster bars here in town.
Mm-hmm.
Insane markup, though, like a tall boy for $5. Fuck that, I can go get 4 of them at Publix.
Yeah, now that it seems to me that there's probably really interesting quasi-journalistic stories. Like, what was the epicenter of all that? Was this just a really smart push by a bunch of PBR reps? Because you can't just push a beer and make it cool on its own. Some really like concentrated cluster of tastemakers in some city decided it was cool to do this again, and then it just spread like wildfire. People in fucking Manhattan are drinking PBR.
Yeah, I don't know. The only thing I can think of from around that time is that Clint Eastwood was drinking it in Gran Torino. and maybe a bunch of hipsters decided to start drinking it ironically. That's like the only thing that comes to my mind to possibly explain the resurgence.
Gran Torino, I remember the film, but there you go. So here we have, Walt, by the way, I know it was so slight. No one could be faulted for missing it, but you know what? You know what you just attended? This was the Breakup Gaming Society 100th episode bash. This was it. It was you and me.
Yeah, I get to be part of it.
Yeah, you were. That was it. That was the 100th party. Because I had a few people ask me, "What are you going to do for the 100th?" I'm like, put my head down and start working on the 101st.
Good answer.
What came to me is like, well, I'm gonna tip one with Walt. So there we did. Thanks for celebrating with me, bro.
Fucking A, man. Thanks for having me. Glad to be a part of it.
Drink of the week's over. Go listen to something else. Walt will return later this episode for Game of the Week to show us a duo of wild indie tabletop role-playing games that now live in exile on a Google Drive. But that's after my first impression of Pyrotechnics, which is after this bumper.
I kicked it, yup, I kicked it. Come on, you couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
One of the principles that has crystallized for me after 100 episodes is to be ruthless about external dependencies. If you really want to do X, but you've made X dependent on Y, where Y is a person or event or a piece of software or some other nuisance, I make it my job to reimagine X without Y and get the lessened version of X done at all costs with my own two hands, or just scratch it and move on to whatever Z is, as Vinny Paz once reminded us in a very street version of abundance mindset. Homie, what can you do to me? There's nothing but space and opportunity. This kind of triage can help train you out of that kind of thinking where your personal projects get as far-flung and fragile as a pre-COVID supply chain. I've actually come to believe that these Byzantine webs of dependencies masquerading as plans are actually a way of saying, I'm actually scared to try, because there's always something too expensive or somebody who won't call you back or whatever. You always have to be on guard against the recreant and daydreamer in your head. There's your vocab word of the day, RECREANT. Do it. Look it up, coward. I got stuck briefly in one of those pouty throw up your hands fits when I was really excited to try out my copy of Pyrotechnics, one of the pile of indie games I previewed for you 2 episodes ago. But the schedule sagged because it's a 2-player game, and I put it off because I didn't want another repeat of my last 2 boring multiplayer sits. I was slipping sideways into that same old trap. I can get this written up if I can line up X or Y, and if they like it enough to figure out what makes it work to give me a good enough game, and if they don't take 45 minutes of breaks in a 20-minute game or quit the game early to show me some bullshit on their phone, etc., etc., etc. So I awoke 3 days before this episode was due and realized I could just fudge my own Atoma for the first series of Pyrotechnics. We are doing a bit of hand management and action selection to see if you can be the first to research, discover, and set off 5 kinds of fireworks before your opponent can. The goal is to be the first player with an empty hand by using card effects and smartly managing the game's microeconomy of tokens called sparks. My Atoma's name is Fardo, the Lakeside Festival arsonist, who is patented and highly trained on 3 decades of articles from every newspaper in Indiana from 1896 to 1916, but you're not allowed to use Fardo without subscribing to my service. Again, check the donate page on breakupgamingsociety.com. In addition to giving away one of my better comic books, I'll spot somebody a free enterprise subscription to Fardo that comes with up to 50 seats. That's 50 motherfuckers you can lay off right now. As far as proof of concept goes, I used Fardo's proprietary capabilities to help me simulate enough of the game so I could see how the 3 actions and card mechanics delivered on the box's promise of a short but chewy 10-minute contest. On a turn of Pyrotechnics, you've got 5 cards in your hand and a supply of 5 cards in the middle, each depicting a kind of firework display. There are just 3 actions: research, discover, and display on each card, with icons telling you how to resolve the effect you want to trigger. The first step on your turn is always research, which has to be done with one of the cards from your hand. On the second step, you can discover or display using one of the face-up cards in the common market. Discover lets you gain or manipulate more sparks, and Display lets you use those sparks to make the sky go boom and get that card out of your hand. Congratulations, you're one step closer to being the best pyrotechnician in Greater Osage County. Spark tokens come in 6 colors that move to the supply, your pile, or your opponent's pile, depending on which of the 3 game actions you take. Putting on a successful display means paying some amount of sparks, either in common red, yellow, blue primary sparks or rarer purple, green, orange sparks, which require intervening exchange moves to get your hands on. The movement of sparks and cards create 2 poles of interesting tension. You're always forced to put the card you used for research into the supply, forcing you to think about what kind of actions you just made available to your opponent, and you've got to make very efficient spark acquisition moves in the little microeconomy. I was grinding my gears a bit, and even poor Fardo was totally out to sea. After my first few games, I did acquire a starter kit repertoire of a few no-nonsense opener moves. Fardo's job was mostly taking random actions based on a die roll. One of the rules Fardo lived by was that it always set off a display if it had the sparks in hand to do one. Little MFR actually beat me the first game, but soon after that I was intervening in Fardo's base programming, optimizing some of its trade actions so it wasn't out-and-out wasting turns. Because the experience is so recent, I can't help but compare it to another short player I reviewed last episode, Battle Card from Postmark Games, because these games both offer almost comically compact playtimes. Battle Card's strong suit, as I noted, was the beauty of its maps and the junctures on them where chance and daring mesh with the actual historical battle you're playing. These games run about the same playing time, but I felt there was just magically somehow more game in Pyrotechnics just because of how it felt when my brain started to run increasingly high-stakes figure-8 patterns of decisions around the card drafting and spark management polls. I think it's the tightness and repetition of play in Pyrotechnics' 3 acts and the way the spark supply and actions take on distinct dimensions in such a short time. An opening series of more forgiving moves where you simply bring some sparks in to get it all started. A middle rush of displays being put out, and the way you always have to think about the way your spark supply and what you're handing to your opponent when you slide the card you used for research back into the supply. And then there's a tight end run of agonizing couple turns where you're trying to dump the last card without accidentally handing a huge opportunity to Fardo. In this instance, I refer to your friend Fardo from college, not my advanced AI. The headspace it occupies is all out of proportion with the time elapsed, brisk and pleasantly displacing. I would love to session this over a beer or two with a friend. This feels like a gem that formed in carefully tended mathematical rock. Of course, an opponent will bring to the fore a lot more potential that Fardo couldn't. Nasty spark theft at the right time, resource denial plays, and those bluffs and feints that the box copy talks about, although I'm not yet seeing that at my current level of experience. But I want that experience to grow with this tightly orchestrated display of pops, crumps, and bursts on the game table. This was a buoyant and stimulating break from what I've been playing lately, and I can't imagine 2 hobbyists or casuals who wouldn't delight in knocking down 5 or 6 matches over lunch. Right now the game is still in prototype phase, fuse burning down to the last inch or 2. You can stay updated on when the finished box is ready at seahorseandhummingbird.com or head to Midnight Market starting November 7th. It's a virtual 3-day indie game market hosted by Lunarpunk Games, at which Pyrotechnics will be available for sale. Get details on that one at lunarpunk.games. So, did you like the pretty fireworks and computer jokes? Good. Because now we're setting off 2 displays of near-future role-playing hell with Burnout Reaper and Digital Angel from our guest Walt's long list of indie tabletop role-playing games that he feels deserve more consideration than they're getting. These titles also figure in a recent story about a purge of games from itch.io that pissed off a lot of designers and fans. But what are these games about? That's what Walt tells us during a recent interview, which went like this. Burnout Reaper by, tell me again the name of the creator.
Sandro A.D.
Okay, so why Burnout Reaper? Why today?
Great question. Heading into this, I kind of told myself I'm not going to put anything on the list that I've already discussed in any kind of extent outside of like a Twitter thread or something like that. And I did write a little bit about Burnout Reaper on a blog post I did a couple years ago, kind of running down some of my picks from a group of charity bundles on Itch.io that were running at the time. So Burnout Reaper is just kind of more of an introduction to the second game that I want to get to, but they both deal with a lot of the same motifs and concepts, so I feel like it's kind of cool to talk about them together. And the why, I'm going to have to hold that for the end, and I think it'll make more sense in retrospect.
What's happening in this world? Who are me and my friends in this world? What are we trying to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is the dystopian future of 2022.
Mm-hmm.
And the main feature about your character is that you have debt that you need to pay off. And what better way to make some quick scratch than on the Reaper app, where you get assignments for jobs to go harvest organs, and then you can drop them off at the post office, get paid, pay your bills, but then there's more debt and more bills, so off you go again to harvest some more organs. It is not a happy game.
Just listening to that, I felt my mind splitting in two directions. One, to go on a 28-minute spit-flecked class rage tirade, or B, sort of accept the little bit of humorous distancing that Burnout Reaper offers us about all this. Because some days it's hard, man. I'm not going to fucking lie to you.
Yeah, and Burnout Reaper knows that. That's the whole point. Like, it's a playable game. There is levity in the instructions, and it's very small. It fits on the front and back of a standard piece of paper. It's meant to be presented as a trifold pamphlet. It's a pretty lean game. Sandro crams a lot of stuff onto the page, and I really like it because the density of the visual layout, and especially the typefaces and the arrangement, all really feels very information crowded and reminds me a lot of Tristan Zara's visual poetry that was inspired by the visual language of advertising in the early part of the 20th century. So it really kind of gives this visual dimension of living in this really fucking terrible cyberpunk dystopia where you have nothing but advertisements going off in front of you all the goddamn time.
So what do you do and how in Burnout Reaper? Is it something that you campaign with your friends? Is it set up for one shot?
I think you could do either. Characters probably aren't going to have a whole lot of longevity. And just to come back around, because I stopped short of my actual point there, despite how dense this is, Sandro does manage to get a fair amount of gallows humor onto the page. And a lot of that is in explaining the mechanics. And what you have is a not super complicated die pool system where you get to roll a bunch of dice to accomplish any given task, overcome some conflict. There will be maybe fast, maybe slow, but an attrition of dice in that pool as you're rolling, which will eventually either kill your character or just make them want to lie down in the gutter and welcome death. It's a little more complex than just the standard roll a bunch of dice and try to get over a certain number. There's a little bit of more nuance to it that makes it a little more mechanically interesting than, say, something like the Year Zero engine, where roll a bunch of D6s, try to get 6s, or the old White Wolf system with D10s.
Does the creator give you quick start missions? Do you just roll up a table to figure out what kind of organ you're harvesting from what kind of jerk and go?
Yeah, and that's one of the really interesting things. You'll roll for what kind of debt you have, and it'll also give you a certain little perk. But there is a table of 6 missions that you can roll on. Obviously, the GM can come up with their own if they want to, but they are missions that are going to challenge your humanity as a character and a player, because every single one is a person who has a valuable organ, but they're also valuable in a positive way to society, in a society that is overwhelmingly negative. For example, one of them is bones of a doctor. You need to go and harvest this physician's bones, but they're also a cutting edge researcher on neurodegeneration, and they're on the cusp of, coming up with a therapy to cure Alzheimer's, for example. So yeah, you can pay your shitty bill, but at what cost to the rest of human civilization?
I don't know why I've had a part of my mind, I think a backstory for my character, and I don't know what their name is, they identify it as, but I know how they got their debt already.
Go on.
Over the course of 18 months, $13,000 food on Grubhub at 50.99% APR.
Oh, so typical day in 2025, I guess?
I think give it. I think it looks like the usury laws cap a lot of this stuff around the low 30s, but give it a year or two. Yeah,
we're getting there. We have something to aspire to.
Exactly. So anyway, I know how I want to get into debt, and so it sounds like mostly the mechanics and story meat come from you get your target, and then it's skill checks in the story to acquire them and see if you subdue them and walk away with that synthetic pancreas in your Yeti cooler.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is a trifold pamphlet. What it gives you is very lean. So as a GM, you're going to have to come up with the escalating complications that are going to keep this from just being, I walk in, I kill this person, and, I steal their pancreas or whatever it is that you're going for. So on the one hand, it's something of a creative challenge for the GM to put this into action, but I don't think that that's a bad thing. And it really lends itself to kind of much more improvising, off-the-cuff sort of gameplay. And the mechanics are frankly simple enough that that's not going to be a problem. There's no legalism and no real math homework to be doing to figure out, can I do this? How does it happen? What skill check should I make?
Is there anything about Burnout Reaper that we didn't touch on but should have?
Just one thing that as I was rereading it really jumped out at me as just being iconic of what this game is all about. It's under the Keep It Weird section for the game runner. Magic is real. Xenos can make appearances. Eldritch things will recoil in horror at the modern abomination mankind has created. Even Cthulhu would be disgusted at what human society and culture has become. It's apparently nothing out of the ordinary. You might be going to the post office and have to fight dinosaurs. That's just the kind of weird world that this is set in. Though that isn't super emphasized, it's really focused more on the cyberpunk setting, but there's room for other weird stuff to find its way in. And the game runner has carte blanche to do so.
You could, in an encounter, eat a big bipedal cephalopod kind of thing, but the only thing you care about is whether or not it owes money.
Or if it has harvestable organs.
Once again, that was Walt talking Burnout Reaper by
Sandro A.D.
Walt, 2 games by Sandro that you're spotlighting today. And the second one, I've read a little bit about it. This one sounds, it makes Burnout Reaper look like an Amish barn raising.
Yeah, you can play Burnout Reaper with your kids compared to the next one.
That's your cue. Talk to us about the next one, if you would, sir.
And the next one, it is the dark dystopian future of 2026, and we are back in Paradise City, and the game is Digital Angel. This really made me sit up and kind of scratch my head and wonder, what am I getting myself into? But I remembered Burnout Reaper, and I remembered that was very smart, so I went ahead and I grabbed this one, and it is called Digital Angel. In Digital Angel, you are going to play a digital sex worker, and again, this kind of psychotic dystopian cyberpunk future, and I'm sure you can already imagine a lot of what goes on in this game.
You mentioned it to me earlier, and I think it sounds like, well, first of all, looked at the landing page for this when you first showed me your big list, and some of those hard-boiled sentences in there, which really boil down some of the only the beautiful will eat or something, and it's just like, oh boy, so let me say, it's like Black Mirror. It's just close enough to make you extra queasy.
Yeah, it's Sandro bills it as a cruel and horny cyber puke game.
So have you got this one on the table or on the swing or on the whatever it
is? No. This is one of those games that I'm very interested in concept. I'm not sure I'm interested in actually playing it because some of this just doesn't seem like my idea of a good time. Like, I could play Burnout Reaper and keep it kind of cheeky and as lighthearted as you could keep a game about harvesting organs, but Digital Angel is really heavy.
Hit us with a little bit of the flavor text from game description, would you? Because this language hits hard, and I'd love it if our listeners got a sample of that.
But you know what you are. A biosynthetic prophet of neurochemical enlightenment, a hardwired hard fucking automat of taboo transcendence, a divine anatomical amalgam bit crushed into binary rays of light on cold glass. The people hate you. The people need you. Give them their communion or die in obscurity.
Okay.
Yeah, even I think I need to go pray after looking at this game again.
It seems to me you would have to have very close friends with whom you've been able to say anything in front of for 20 years to even play this game. Right? How does this work?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's in the disclaimer on the very first page. The game is meant to be played among a group of consenting perverted adults with excellent communication skills and high interpersonal trust. Read and play at your own risk. And I think it's good advice.
Maybe it wasn't the best idea for me to just bring this down to the coffee shop.
Right? Take that to your local game store. See what kind of looks you get if you're even allowed to stay inside.
You said this was so you are one of these hybrid digital sexual beings in the book, and what enforces the arc, if there is one? What are you trying to do? Just get piles of money or die?
Fundamentally, same setup as Burnout Reaper. You live in an oppressive society with an unfair economy, and you have debt. This is your one opportunity to really wipe that out without working at a dead-end job, a desk job, service industry, which you're never going to wipe out your debt anyway. But here, you're lucky, you're beautiful, you're desirable, and that might be able to get you out of debt, or it might kill you. And chances are it's going to kill you.
Alessandro AD put both of these games on a Google Drive if you want to download and try them. See the episode description for the link. Quick addendum. I'm going to circle back to the external dependencies problem in context of a couple episodes ago when I shared initial impressions of Hollenspiel games Sykes-Picot, The Secret Treaty to Partition the Ottoman Empire. I think it was episode 97. Now, the awareness of colonial ruthlessness is baked into the framing of the rules. My limited playthrough but also had me wondering how deeply that could permeate actual play or the off-the-table contract between players if you want to do it cooperatively. So I reached out to game designer Brooks Barber on Discord. Always meant to circle back and ask. That hypothetical I posed about cooperative play in Sykes-Picot, subverting the historical assumptions by player compact, trying to architect a board that preserves the occupants' lands to what degree possible, accepting the "you're both terrible diplomats" outcome while the two men smile to each other on their rides home, knowing they've served their consciences for the first time. Am I insane? Here's Brooks' response. Here's how I see it. No matter how players choose to play, they can't escape the historical reality that they are engaging in something horrific. You can play cooperatively and even wink yourself to not achieving your individual objectives, but the Middle East still ends up carved into zones for your respective nations to interfere with. But I suppose you could work toward a map that closely resembles what its occupants might want. But how would you know? I'm not sure that within the game's framework lives an understanding of what the Arabs and Turks and Kurds and Armenians and others actually wanted to happen. I think there's a game out there that allows for those voices, but I intentionally excluded them here for the sake of my argument. I'd still be interested in how players actually feel playing that way, though, so if you ever get around to it, please follow up. Thanks, Brooks. Will do. Also, thanks for the games of Shores of Tripoli on Rally the Troops. That game is cool as hell. Next, track of the week. Pick something out for you.
I kicked it, yup, I kicked it, come on. You couldn't bang with this if your name was Genghis Khan.
If you hated hit rap in the early part of this century, you had plenty of options. Sean Price was about to author his amazing second act. Doom had arrived and was ruling. Jurassic 5 and Cut Chemist were giving you the next-gen version of life-affirming MCing and pristine beats. Cunning Linguists out of the South, Foreign Legion out of the Bay. And over in the UK, DJ Format and Abdominal were doing the same thing every bit as well. Format's simple choices here. Snappy drums with that double hit accent playing off the double guitar stab is basically all you ever need in the entire world. Abdominal, along with supporting bars by Deep and Decisive, lay down fast-paced lines with a perfect balance of style, machismo, hard-hitting snaps that skirt the taste list without going full edgelord, self-awareness, and lots of funny transitions.
If you didn't know, my name is Abdominal on the sophomore format release. Lots of store cause we dropped again, but this time with a slight twist. I brought a friend, also hailing from the snowy north shores of Canada. Format fans, I introduce to you the man of the year, but I would even stretch so far as to say the decade. Watch him go crazy when the records play. So please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in giving you nicest format. Welcome to MC Decisive.
Thank you. No, really, you're too kind.
Pace cooks and the punchlines land. Abdominal is one of those MCs you can play if you like a good, hard verbal shoulder check without driving any of your more sensitive friends out of the room. He's witty as hell, and the guests here aren't mailing it in either. I'm still listening to unpack all the artful boasts, put-downs, and payoffs in this dense tapestry of pure hip-hop fun. Also, if you ever want to go absolutely insane, thinking you've set an alarm on a digital device you don't even own, Chorus always delivers.
Check the way that you can't see us like needles or haystacks when we rock mics. Monkeys know where to focus the spotlight.
If you were to visit me in Starkville before the nights dip below 40, this would get played along with The Moose by the Charlie Barnett Orchestra, because that's how I'd want the end of your summer to feel. That's the end of episode 100, and here's how I want you to feel at the end of this episode. Vaguely excited, because I figured out the title from the box I'm going to give away in a random drawing to one of the donors that helps us get over $101 for the year. Marvel Secret Wars number 8. The first appearance of Spidey's black symbiotic pajamas. I think it's my most valuable one. Last time I looked, it was selling raw for about $100, maybe more if you're into grading and selling and shipping comics, which I'm not. Just want to be free. Hope to have you back for episode 101, which will feature more explorations of my indie small game pile and my first plays of Resist, a solo game from 2022 that focuses on trying to keep a little band of Spanish insurgents alive and do things that harry General Franco's fascistas during the Spanish Civil War. Until then, I remain your host and friend, the Colonel Hector Bravado in Starkville, Colorado. May you fight long and well.
All cats, right?